The factory had gone quiet in a way that felt unnatural, like a held breath that refused to release. Machines that were supposed to roar stood frozen, belts slack, indicator lights blinking useless warnings. The air smelled of oil, overheated metal, and anxiety. Workers lingered near their stations pretending to tidy tools that didn't need cleaning, glancing again and again toward the massive engine at the center of the floor. It was the heart of the entire operation, a towering steel beast that fed power to every line in the building. And it was dead. She arrived with the sharp rhythm of heels striking concrete, the sound echoing louder than any siren. Conversations died instantly. Heads lowered. Spines straightened. Her presence carried authority the way a storm carried thunder. Tailored suit. Perfect posture. Eyes cold, calculating, already measuring the cost of every second the engine remained silent. She stopped in front of the engine and stared at it like it had personally betrayed her. "How long?" she asked, without raising her voice. "Has this been down?" No one answered. She turned slowly, gaze sweeping across supervisors, engineers, managers. Men with degrees, clipboards, and rehearsed excuses suddenly found the floor fascinating. "I asked a question?" 3 weeks. Someone finally muttered. Her jaw tightened. 3 weeks, she repeated. "Do you know how much money this engine costs me every hour it's down?" Still silence. She exhaled through her nose, controlled but furious. "I didn't build this company on silence. I built it on results." She stepped closer to the engine, running a manicured hand along its steel casing. "I was told this machine is unfixable. That it needs replacement." She laughed once, sharp and humorless. "Funny how nothing is ever unfixable when bonuses are on the line, but suddenly impossible when real work is required." A ripple of discomfort moved through the crowd. That was when she noticed him. He stood at the far edge of the group, half shadowed by stacked crates, leaning casually against a rolling tool cart. His coveralls were faded, sleeves rolled up, skin streaked with grease that no amount of scrubbing ever fully removed. His boots were worn but clean. His posture was relaxed in a way that didn't ask permission. Most of all, he wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the engine. Not like a problem. Like a conversation waiting to resume. "You," she said, pointing without hesitation. "Step forward." The crowd parted reluctantly. He pushed himself off the cart and walked toward her with unhurried steps. Each one echoed louder than it should have. "What's your role here?" she asked. He stopped a few feet away. "I fix things." She raised an eyebrow. "Is that what you call it?" "That's what it is." A few quiet snickers broke out behind him. Someone whispered something about overconfidence. Another shook his head. She crossed her arms. "You think you can fix this engine?" He glanced back at it, eyes scanning the exposed panels, the makeshift patches, the stains where shortcuts had been taken. "Yes." The confidence in that single word landed wrong. Too solid. Too calm. Her lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You engineers hear that?" she said. "Apparently all we needed was this." The laughter was louder now. Safer. Directed. He didn't react. "You know," she continued, voice light with mockery, "I've paid millions for specialists who couldn't do what you're claiming." "I know," he said. "I watched them try." That earned a few gasps. She stepped closer, invading his space. "Careful." He met her gaze evenly. "You asked?" Her smile sharpened. "Fine. Impress me." She turned to the assembled crowd. "If he fixes this engine," she said loudly, theatrically, "I'll marry him." The laughter exploded. Someone clapped. Someone else shook their head in disbelief. A manager wiped tears from his eyes. He didn't laugh. He nodded once, slow and deliberate. "All right." The laughter faltered. She tilted her head. "You don't even hesitate." "No," he said. "Because I'm not doing it for that." She scoffed. "Then do it for the paycheck. You have 10 minutes. She stepped back, checking her watch. He didn't rush. He walked around the engine slowly, palm brushing along the metal like he was greeting an old friend. He crouched, listening, even though the machine was silent. He tapped a valve, smelled a vent, traced a wire with his fingers. An engineer whispered, "He doesn't even have a diagnostic tablet." Another muttered, "This is a waste of time." She watched with thinly veiled amusement. Tick-tock. He removed a panel with practiced ease, revealing a mess of wiring and hurried fixes. His jaw tightened for a fraction of a second. "So that's what you did," he murmured. "What was that?" she snapped. He looked up. "Nothing." Minutes passed. Sweat formed at his hairline. Grease darkened his hands further as he worked. He replaced nothing. He added nothing. He only removed, adjusted, realigned. The laughter had died completely. 5 minutes left. She folded her arms again. "Anything yet?" He didn't answer. He leaned in close, ear pressed against the engine housing, eyes closed. His breathing slowed, syncing with something only he could hear. Someone coughed nervously. 7 minutes gone. A supervisor whispered, "This is embarrassing." She nodded. "Escort him out when the time's up." He straightened suddenly. "There," he said softly. Her eyes narrowed. "There what?" "The lie," he replied, turning to face her. "Someone told you this engine failed on its own." A ripple of unease spread. "That's ridiculous," an engineer said too quickly. He pointed at a sealed section. "You bypassed the feedback loop. Covered it up so it looked operational." The engineer's face drained of color. "You don't know what you're talking about," she snapped. He reached inside, fingers moving with surgical precision, and pulled out a hidden splice. "This is lazy. And dangerous." The factory went silent again, heavier than before. She stared at the exposed wire, then back at him. "How do you know this machine so well?" she asked, voice no longer mocking. He wiped his hands on a rag. "Because I grew up listening to it breathe." She didn't understand yet. But something in his tone unsettled her. "1 minute," she said. He nodded. "That's enough." He turned one final valve, then stepped back. "Start it." She hesitated. "Start it," he repeated. The button was pressed. The engine shuddered, coughed, and went still. A wave of relief-laced laughter broke out. She smiled coldly. "Time's up." He raised one finger. "Wait." The floor vibrated. A low rumble built, deep and steady. Lights flickered. Then the engine roared to life. And for the first time since she arrived, she had nothing to say. The sound didn't fade. It didn't sputter or choke the way everyone expected. It settled into a deep, steady rhythm that rolled through the factory floor like a living pulse. Tools rattled softly on metal tables. Dust drifted down from overhead beams. Workers stared at the engine as if it might suddenly vanish, afraid to blink in case it stopped again. The laughter that had filled the room moments earlier was gone. Completely erased. He stood where he was, hands hanging loosely at his sides, eyes fixed on the engine, listening. Not watching. Listening. As if the machine were speaking and he was making sure every word came out right. She remained frozen near the control panel, one hand still hovering close to the emergency stop. Her mouth was slightly open, but no sound came out. She pressed her lips together, then slowly lowered her hand. "That's not possible," someone whispered. The engine continued to run. An engineer stepped forward, flipping through data on his tablet with shaking fingers. "The pressure is stable," he said, disbelief thick in his voice. "Temperature's normal. Output's clean." Another checked a gauge. "It hasn't done this in years." She turned toward the mechanic, her heels clicking sharply now, as if sound itself could reassert her control. "Turn it off." He glanced at her. "You don't shut down a heart just because it surprised you." That earned a sharp intake of breath from the crowd. Her eyes flashed. "You forget who you're talking to." He didn't raise his voice. "No. You forget who you were talking to." Silence stretched again, heavier than before. She motioned for the engine to be powered down properly. As the rumble faded into quiet, the room seemed to shrink. Everyone felt it. The tension had changed shape. It was no longer about a broken machine. It was about what came next. She faced him fully now. "You exposed a serious accusation," she said carefully. "If you're wrong." "I'm not," he replied. A senior engineer stepped in quickly. "This is inappropriate. He had no authorization to." "Stop," she snapped. The engineer fell silent. She studied the mechanic with new eyes, as if trying to see past the grease, the uniform, the assumptions she hadn't realized she'd made. "How long have you worked here?" "Long enough." "That's not an answer." He met her gaze evenly. "Since before the new logo. Before the glass offices. Before the slogans." A few workers exchanged looks. "You've been invisible," she said quietly. He shrugged. "Only to people who don't look down." That stung, and it showed. Her jaw tightened again, but this time there was something else mixed in. Uncertainty. "You embarrassed my leadership team," she said. "They embarrassed themselves," he replied. "I just stopped pretending." Murmurs rippled through the workers, now bolder, less afraid. A manager whispered, "He's going to get fired." Another murmured back, "Or promoted." She raised a hand, silencing them all. "Everyone back to your stations," she ordered. "I want diagnostics rerun. Full audit." People hesitated. "Now." They scattered, but not before more than a few glanced back at him with something close to awe. When the floor had mostly cleared, she turned to him again. "You could have kept quiet," she said. "You chose not to." "I chose honesty," he replied. "You can fire me for it if you want." She studied his face, searching for fear. There was none. "You really thought I meant what I said?" she asked suddenly, her voice lower. "About marrying you?" He didn't smile. "No." "Then why agree?" "Because you weren't talking to me," he said. "You were talking about me." Her brow furrowed. "I agreed so you'd have to look at me," he continued. "Really look." For the first time since stepping onto the factory floor, she didn't have a ready response. Before she could speak, alarms chirped softly from a panel nearby. An engineer rushed over. "Pressure's spiking again," he said. "Something's off." Her head snapped up. "What?" The mechanic was already moving. "Shut up and follow me," he said, not unkindly, already pulling off another panel. The engineer hesitated, then obeyed. "Wait," she said. "What's happening?" "They rushed the restart," he replied without looking back. "The damage isn't fully undone." "How much time do we have?" she asked sharply. He paused, listening again, then answered honestly. "Not much." The tension snapped back instantly, sharper than before. "What happens if it fails again?" she asked. He straightened slowly. "Then you don't just lose production." Her eyes widened. "You're saying it could explode?" "I'm saying shortcuts don't forgive," he replied. She swallowed. For the first time, she looked scared. "Everyone out of the zone," she ordered into her radio. "Now." Red lights flashed. Workers evacuated quickly, fear replacing curiosity. She stayed. "You should leave," he said. "So should you," she replied. He shook his head. "Someone has to finish it. And you think that someone is you." "I know it is." She hesitated only a second before stepping closer. "Tell me what to do." That surprised him. It surprised everyone watching from behind safety glass. He handed her a tool. "Hold this steady." She did, hands trembling slightly. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Undoing years of bad decisions," he replied. The engine groaned suddenly, a deep metallic strain that echoed through the hall. She flinched. "That doesn't sound good." "It's fighting," he said calmly. "So are we." Sweat rolled down his face now. His movements were fast but precise, like muscle memory guiding every motion. He called out adjustments. She followed, listening without argument. "You trust me awfully fast," she said between breaths. "I don't," he replied. "But the engine does." The pressure alarm blared louder. 30 seconds, the engineer shouted from a safe distance. He nodded once. "That's enough." He made one final adjustment and slammed the panel shut. "Cut auxiliary power." "Now." She hesitated for half a heartbeat, then did it. The engine screamed. Then fell silent. The lights steadied. No explosion. No collapse. Just quiet. For a long moment, no one moved. Then a technician shouted, "Pressure's normal. Everything's stable." Relief hit the room like a wave. She leaned back against the railing, breath shaking. "You just saved the entire facility." He wiped his hands slowly, exhaustion finally visible. "It shouldn't have needed saving." She looked at him then, really looked. Not as a mechanic. Not as a challenge. But as a man who had stood his ground while everyone else hid. "You put everything on the line," she said. He nodded. "Every day. You just noticed today." Behind them, the engine cooled quietly, waiting. And in that moment, she realized the machine wasn't the only thing in the building that had been dangerously underestimated. The factory did not erupt into applause. It didn't need to. The silence that followed was heavier than any celebration, thick with realization and something close to shame. The engine sat still now, cooling, metal ticking softly as it settled into alignment, no longer fighting itself. It sounded calmer, almost relieved. He leaned against the railing for a moment, catching his breath. His shoulders sagged just slightly, enough for anyone paying attention to see the cost of what he'd just done. Grease streaked his forearms. His hands trembled faintly from adrenaline, not fear. Never fear. She watched him from a few steps away. Not the way she watched balance sheets or board members, but the way someone watches a fire after realizing how close they came to being burned. "You didn't have to stay," she said quietly. "You could have walked out after proving your point." He looked at the engine again before answering. "Points don't keep people safe." She swallowed. The alarms were off now. The red lights had dimmed. People were filtering back in cautiously, speaking in hushed voices, eyes darting between the two of them. Something unspoken had shifted in the air. "You knew it would surge again," she said. "Yes." "And you still started it." "Yes." "That was reckless." "No," he replied. "That was necessary." She stared at him, searching for arrogance, for ego, for some hunger for recognition. She found none. Only certainty. "Why didn't you tell anyone sooner?" she asked. "About the bypass. About the shortcuts." He finally met her eyes fully. "Because no one asked?" The words landed harder than accusation. "You think I wouldn't have listened? I think you would have heard," he said. "Listening is different." That stung more than any insult. She turned away briefly, staring out over the factory floor she'd inherited, expanded, polished. From above, it looked efficient. Profitable. From where he stood, it looked fragile. "Who trained you?" she asked again, softer this time. He hesitated. It was the first time he had hesitated. "My father," he said. "And the man who trained him. And the man before that." She turned back. "This engine line was installed 40 years ago." He nodded. "My grandfather helped design the first prototype." The words rearranged everything. "That's not possible," she said reflexively, then stopped herself. "Is it?" He gestured toward the engine. "It wasn't designed to be replaced every 10 years. It was designed to last if people respected it." Her breath caught. "Your family built this." "Not owned it," he corrected. "Built it." Around them, engineers pretended not to listen while hearing every word. "Then why are you here?" she asked. "Why didn't you move on? Take a better position?" He smiled faintly, but there was no humor in it. "Because when my father was laid off, He said someone needed to stay. Someone needed to remember what the machine sounded like when it was healthy. She closed her eyes briefly. And when I came in, she said, the truth dawning, all I saw were costs. Yes. And when something broke, you replace people before parts. He finished calmly. She flinched. You don't need to apologize, he said. You just need to decide what happens next. That scared her more than the engine ever had. What do you want? She asked. He shook his head. That's the wrong question. Then tell me the right one. He looked around the factory, at the workers returning to their posts, at the engine that had nearly torn itself apart under bad decisions. Ask what this place needs. She followed his gaze. And what does it need? She asked. Truth, he said. Time. And fewer people who are afraid to look foolish. A murmur ran through the nearby workers. Some nodded. Some looked away. She straightened slowly, the familiar armor of leadership settling back over her, but altered now, reshaped. If what you're saying is true, she said, then my entire maintenance philosophy is wrong. Yes. You're asking me to admit that publicly. Yes. You realize what that would do to my board? He met her gaze evenly. I do. And you don't care. I care about this place, he replied. Not about what it costs you to save it. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The ticking of cooling metal filled the gap. She turned to the engineers, her voice carrying. I want a full audit of every system on this floor. No shortcuts. No cover-ups. If something was bypassed, I want to know who signed off on it. Faces paled. And, she added, I want him leading it. Every head snapped toward him. He stiffened. I didn't ask for. I know, she said. That's why you're the right choice. A senior manager stepped forward, voice tight. With all due respect, this is highly irregular. She cut him off with a look. So was nearly blowing up my factory. The manager fell silent. She turned back to the mechanic. You'll have authority. Real authority. He considered that, then shook his head slowly. Authority won't change anything if people don't believe you mean it. I do, she said. Then prove it, he replied. How? Fire the man who approved the bypass. A sharp intake of breath echoed. She didn't hesitate. Effective immediately. The engineer's face crumpled. You can't. She raised a hand. Security will escort you out. It was done. The room felt different after that. Lighter. More dangerous, somehow. He exhaled slowly. That's a start. She turned to him. About what I said earlier. He looked at her, already knowing. I used you as a joke, she said. As a symbol. Yes. And you let me? Yes. Why? Because sometimes people need to hear themselves out loud to realize how ugly it sounds. Her throat tightened. I won't insult you with an apology that doesn't change anything, she said. But I won't forget today. He nodded. Neither will the engine. She almost laughed at that. An assistant approached, nervous. The board is requesting an emergency call. She glanced at the mechanic. Will you be here? I'm not going anywhere, he replied. She squared her shoulders and walked toward the glass offices above, every step heavier than the last. Halfway up the stairs, she stopped and turned back. You fixed the engine, she said. But you didn't finish the job. He raised an eyebrow. What's left? Me, she said honestly. As she disappeared behind the glass, he turned back to the machine, placing a hand on the warm steel. Almost there, he murmured. The engine hummed softly in response. And everyone who heard it understood that the final reckoning had not yet arrived, but when it did, nothing would be the same. Morning light spilled through the high factory windows, cutting through the lingering haze of oil and steam. The engine stood fully operational now, humming with a calm confidence that hadn't existed in years. It no longer felt like a threat or a liability. It felt like it belonged again. Workers gathered early, quieter than usual, eyes following every movement on the floor. Rumors had spread overnight. Some true, some exaggerated. All of them pointing to the same thing: something fundamental had changed. She arrived without the usual entourage. No assistants rushing ahead. No phone pressed to her ear. Just measured footsteps and a face stripped of its usual armor. The factory seemed to notice. Conversations paused. Tools slowed. He was already there. Not waiting. Working. She stopped a few feet away and watched him for a moment. He moved with familiarity, not dominance. Adjusting, checking, listening. The engine responded like it trusted him. "You didn't have to come in this early," she said. He didn't look up. "Machines don't care about schedules." She smiled faintly at that, then sobered. "Neither do consequences." He straightened and wiped his hands. "How bad was the call?" She exhaled. "Worse than I expected. Better than I deserved." He nodded once, accepting that answer without comment. "They wanted someone to blame," she continued. "Someone visible. Someone expendable." "And," he asked calmly, "did they find one?" "They tried," she said. "I didn't let them." That earned her his full attention. "You didn't have to protect me," he said. "I wasn't," she replied. "I was protecting the truth." He studied her face, searching for cracks. For performance. He found none. "They voted," she continued. "Some walked out. Some threatened lawsuits. One asked if I'd lost my mind. And," he said, "had you?" She shook her head slowly. "No. I'd finally found it." They stood in silence for a moment, the engine's steady hum filling the space between them. "I issued a statement this morning," she said. "Company-wide." He raised an eyebrow. "I admitted fault," she said. "Publicly. Took responsibility for the shortcuts. Announced a restructuring. That's going to cost you," he said. "Yes," she replied. "And it's going to save us." Workers nearby pretended not to listen while absorbing every word. "I offered you the role officially," she added. "Head of Operations Integrity. Full authority." He was quiet for a long time. "I told you," he said finally. "Authority isn't what fixes places like this." "No," she agreed. "But it gives the right people room to work." He considered that. "And what about the promise?" She didn't flinch. "I withdrew it." Good, he thought, but didn't say. "Not because I was embarrassed," she continued, "but because it was wrong. You weren't something to wager." "Then why bring it up now?" he asked. "Because I owe you clarity," she said. "Not drama." She took a breath. "I respect you. I admire you. And I won't pretend yesterday didn't change how I see you." He met her gaze steadily. But, she said honestly, "I won't build anything on a power imbalance. Or a spectacle." The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "That's the first smart thing you've said about us." She laughed softly, surprised by the sound. A supervisor approached hesitantly. "The line's ready for full load," he said. "If you want to start." She nodded. "Do it." The engine surged smoothly, stronger than before, feeding life into every corner of the factory. Belts spun. Lights steadied. Production resumed, not with fear, but with confidence. Applause broke out this time. Real. Earned. She didn't take it. She gestured toward him. The clapping grew louder. He shifted uncomfortably, then raised a hand. "All of you kept this place alive," he said. "I just reminded it how to breathe." That quieted them. She stepped forward beside him. "This factory was built by hands," she said. "Not titles. Not promises. Hands." She looked at him as she said it. "From today on," she continued, "decisions are made where the work happens. And respect is not optional." The workers nodded. Some smiled. Some wiped their eyes. Later, when the floor had emptied and the noise settled into routine, she found him again near the engine. I meant what I said, she told him. About changing. I know, he replied. You paid for it already. She hesitated. And what about you? What about me? You could leave, she said. With your reputation now, you'd never have trouble finding somewhere better. He placed a hand on the engine's casing, feeling the vibration. Better doesn't always mean louder. She studied him. Then stay. He turned to her. On one condition. She didn't hesitate. Name it. You never joke about people again, he said. Not when they're standing in front of you. Not when they're beneath you. Her throat tightened. Agreed. They stood there for a moment longer, not as CEO and mechanic, not as challenge and answer, but as two people standing in the aftermath of something real. As she turned to leave, she paused. You know, she said lightly. The board asked me if I still planned to marry you. He looked at her, eyebrow raised. I told them, she continued, smiling, that some things aren't earned by fixing engines. And what did they say? He asked. They said, she replied, that was the first time they'd heard me sound human. He watched her walk away, heels echoing softly, no longer demanding attention, just marking her presence. He turned back to the engine, listening to its steady rhythm. It didn't roar anymore. It didn't need to. Because dignity, once restored, doesn't make noise. It just works.